I didn't get a chance to talk about Josiah, the first round of clips from the interview between Gavin Newsom and Sean Hannity, where Gavin Newsom just what's the word? Eviscerates, obliterates, smashes, crushes,
steamroll. I mean, he did all the above.
Sean Hannity on his own show. It's so good to watch. Whatever your issues are with Gavin Newsom, he takes what's the phrase? Hannity to town, to task. I don't know. He takes him somewhere, and it's not good for Hannity.
It's not good for Hannity.
And
Hannity does not want to be where Newsom took him. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely. And round 2 of this interview, clips have started to be broadcasted or whatever. And I want to take a look at a couple from that, starting with this.
This is the honest way to be the fourth largest economy in the world. What are you arguing for? Mississippi's economic policy? Does that mean literally that's what you're arguing for?
Me, if I wanted
the great Sam Brownback's Kansas policy, I mean, it was a debacle. No economic growth. 71% of the GDP in America are in blue counties.
I would
71% of the GDP in America are blue counties. Progressive policies.
Okay, that are paying high taxes and
71% of the country's wealth. 7 of the top 10 dependent states.
Let's say you're right.
States.
Let's say you.
No, we're subsidizing your states, Sean, because of your policies.
I'm in New York. You're not subsidizing anything from me.
But your philosophy.
I'm getting the hell out of New York, though. Mississippi, Alabama, I'm all for it over New York or California.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I love Mississippi.
But what you're saying,
governor leaves me one.
I'm sure. Look, this is not personal.
No, none of it.
But the point
is
I think because of Democrats' fear of offending Republicans, and in saying that red states perform far worse in all of these different metrics, it could come off like you're saying that something's wrong with the people, which is not what is being said. It's actually about the governance and trying to convince the people to get out the bad governors, not just the governor, but those who are governing. And I wish more Democrats could do what Gavin Newsom's doing here, and what you and I have tried to do many times, which is say, we don't need to have, honestly, all of these conversations that we have to have on a daily basis about, Democrats, Republicans, beep, beep, beep. Just look at the receipts. Look at a state-by-state comparison, and federally under different administrations and Congresses. But let's talk about state-to-state comparisons. Something Josiah and I have talked about a lot is undeniably on all these different metrics, education, infrastructure, poverty, whatever it might be, blue states disproportionately perform way better. And Sean Hannity goes, yeah, but they have high taxes. Okay, what if everyone's better off though?
Right. So it's that clip. Yeah, that was not part of the initial 30-minute first half, I guess, that Hannity released 3, 4, or 5 days ago, and I'm excited to see it. It makes me think that round 2, like the latter half hour, might even be better than the first. So actually, Hannity might have staged a marketing coup here. I will say this. We talked about, and this is one of the recurring theses. I don't know if political commentators should have like particular theses, like things that they want to hit again and again and again, but I do, whether we like it or not. There are things that I think, in terms of political messaging, political points, that I want to make as someone who studied politics, somebody who has been, active in canvassing and other things like that, who has tried to do or participate in groundwork. There are some theses that I think are really important, and one of them is the asymmetry of expectation. And you've heard me use that phrase even on the Luke Beasley show in the past, because it's really important. Republicans, conservative thought leaders, are graded on a curve. They can say the most salacious, horrifying things about progressives, liberals, blue cities, blue states. It doesn't matter. They can call them all kinds of, adjectives that, had a Democrat said even a semblance of that with respect to red cities, red states, or whatever, we'd be castigated not only by the mainstream media, but also, not only by conservative media, but mainstream media as well. President Biden could never go and refer to West Virginia the way that Donald Trump and other Republicans have referred to New York or California. That asymmetry has to be ruthlessly crushed, and you and I and everybody watching can play a role in it. Yep. Facts are facts. Remember, facts don't care about your feelings, gang. If that's the case, then let's talk facts, and we can do it without casting aspersions on the dignity of the constituents that live in these states. So full disclosure, I grew up in Kentucky, in rural Kentucky. My family members and friends, many of them are conservative Republicans who vote for Trump and would vote for Trump again. I don't have to cast aspersions or make an indictment on the character of those people. What I can do, though, is rightly criticize the failures of the policies of the people in charge in those red rural states. And that is simply a fact. And facts don't care about your feelings. And the fact of the matter is the states that are most impoverished, least educated, least healthy, and most reliant on federal subsidies are conservative-run Republican states. That's a fact. And you need to be aware of that. And conservative voters need to be made aware of that because they so often vote against their own interests. That's not to say the blue states are perfect. That's not to say that there are probably areas in which blue states could learn certain things from red states as well. But in terms of the metrics that conservatives and Republicans claim to care about, Luke, blue states, blue counties,
and we didn't even mention
them.
You're exactly right. We didn't even mention the study that was done in 2020 when you look at states, because this reflects usually the statewide governing too, that voted for Trump versus Biden. Homicide rates 40% higher in the states that voted for Trump. So red states, 40% higher homicide rate. Crime as well. When you look at high crime, states, so many of them disproportionately are red, and somehow, because of the machine that is Fox News, right-wing media, the GOP, the branding convinces people that some of them aren't even on the right. I know people who are liberals who go, because of my passion for helping people, I support the Democratic Party, but I know Republicans are better for the economy. And then it's not true. It's just not factually true. And he mentioned the Kansas, I'm blanking, Kansas experiment, is that what it's referred to as?
I think so, yeah.
It failed. The trickle-down economic policy that is constantly pushed for fails over and over again. But somehow branding gets the GOP a chance to do it again and again. It makes no sense. Let's watch a second clip from this interview.
And it is a beautiful location. Yeah. And I would argue respectfully, Governor, that if it weren't for the taxation, the regulation, if it weren't for the high cost of living, if it weren't for quality of life issues that we're discussing, if more conservative principles were applied on law and order, on the economy,
probably have higher
on less redistribution, which you seem to support, I would imagine wealthy companies and people would be less inclined to leave.
No.
You would disagree?
Yeah, I mean, look at the facts. We're on our way to be the fourth largest economy in the world. This belies all of that rhetoric, everything you just said. Look at the progress in the state.
But the migration numbers don't belie that?
They were anomalous in the last few years, and they've already slowed down. There's been 3 independent studies, Sean. You should take a look at them, including a brand new one from UCLA that has talked about fundamental reasons.
You're asking me to look at a UCLA study?
I know, but the point, seriously? But my point is,
why don't we make it UC
I'm interested in the facts, not the assertions. I mean, again, we were number 10 on that list. You didn't talk about all those red states that have opposite policies that you embrace. Something clearly is not working right in those states.
Which states?
Mississippi. You've got Louisiana, West Virginia, that all had higher population loss. I'm happy to engage continually.
You're talking on a per capita basis.
I'm talking on a per capita basis. By the way, I don't know what else matters. More Floridians moving to California than Floridians that came from California.
But if you look at the cost of a U-Haul.
I wish we could see more of that. It's so annoying. This is one thing that, in a situation where just undeniably it's so clear on every single metric that the Democratic Party is far better than the GOP, except for the way that they interact with the other party. The GOP goes too far, of course, but the Democrats need to get some of that aggression, not promoting violence or anything like that, but getting some of the passion that you'll see from GOP politicians. And Democrats often, because they have this, they want to be civil, which I respect, but this moment doesn't call for complete civility politics. And Newsom, without even being rude, just laid down some facts. And then Hannity's left saying completely incoherent things and trying to talk about, absolute numbers versus per capita numbers. How is that relevant comparing states ever?
Yeah, when you have states with wildly different population size per cap, there's a reason that every statistician in the world, again, conservative, liberal, it doesn't matter, has always used per capita. Per capita is an infinitely more reliable metric because it's the only thing that can equate to disparate, points of comparison. So yeah, where he was like, well, raw numbers, you're talking about per capita, and just kind of like shrugs at it. But here's the thing. The reason that this interview is so important, and I said before in my coverage, when I covered the first half of this on my channel, I'm not going to sit here and say that debating, which is what this is not really an interview. I mean, it's partially an interview, but it mutates very rapidly into a debate. I'm not saying that that's the single most important quality to have in a chief executive, in a governor or in a president. You got to have judgment, administrative skills, the ability to negotiate. There's so many things that go into it. But I do think that this energy and this debate prowess lends itself well to the Democratic Party in general. And because Newsom isn't running for president, I'm glad that he's leading the charge in this. He has made it a point. He has made it his mission to be a progressive counterweight to Governors DeSantis and Abbott in Republican states. These are highly prominent, high-profile culture warriors that like to sling mud and duke it out and talk smack about blue states and Democrats. And Newsom isn't necessarily going as far as they do rhetorically. He's not insulting the way that they do, but he has basically made it his mission where, no, I'm going to be a counterweight to this. I'm going to go nose to nose with Ron DeSantis and with Greg Abbott. I'm going to tell their own constituents. I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to pay for billboards and messaging campaigns. I'm going to point out to their constituents, your governors are stupid and corrupt and they're failures. They are failing you, Texas. They are failing you, Florida. And I'm going to get in their face the way that, quite frankly, most other Democrats simply refuse to do.
Yeah.
We have brilliant governors in the Democratic Party, J.D. Pritzker, Gretchen Whitmer, and they produce great results for their state. But they are so focused on their states that they don't take advantage very often of the national platform. DeSantis is trying to do both. He's trying to produce for California and also shore up an obvious... I'm sorry?
You call him DeSantis. Yeah, Newsom.
Oh, yeah. No. No, definitely Newsom. He's trying to do both. He's simultaneously trying to... Newsom is trying to do both. He's trying to produce for California, but he's also trying to be a counterweight to DeSantis and Abbott in a messaging way to fire up the Democratic base, to fire up young progressives. And I think to feed people like you and I and millions of others who want that energy from Democrats. You don't have to be insulting. You don't have to be inhumane, but you can be assertive. You can reject false premises. You can go on Sean Hannity's show and say, listen, I'm not going to let you steamroll me. I'm taking control of the conversation. And that's what Governor Newsom does here. He doesn't accept Newsom's false premise. He'll allow him to get the question out, but then he'll say, listen, we're not going further until I crush the false premise here. And it's Hannity who's constantly giving ground in this conversation. That energy we do need to see more of from the Democratic Party.
We absolutely do. And you've said it before, facts, people say facts speak for themselves. They clearly don't, because facts seem to fail so often in these settings, and Trump's pointing at the grass saying it's purple seems to convince a lot of people. But it is about messaging too. Sometimes people, I think, believe that focusing a lot on branding and messaging makes you more shallow, less nuanced, in touch with the meaningful, impactful issues, which your motivation for the fight should be from a deep place of understanding and of caring about pushing forward good policies. But then you got to take that and you got to outbrand and outmessage the GOP honestly, accurately, but effectively. And facts don't speak for themselves. You have to speak truth to power, if you want to word it that way. You have to make sure people are aware of the facts. And there, Sean Hannity is doing just this bizarre thing where he's going, no, I hear you that you're crushing it on all these metrics. Not that there aren't massive problems in California. Of course there are. But when you compare that state, its economy, to other economies, it's doing so well. And so many blue states are as well. And Hannity will go, yeah, but I hear you, but that's because of other reasons, which of course is not just who's in power that affects a state. But he'll say it would be even better if you did the policies of the states that are doing the worst right now. What? And he was like, I would love to live in Arkansas and Mississippi. Only because now you're really rich and you would have to pay less taxes, I guess. But number one, you would have not been as likely to get as wealthy as you are. You wouldn't have had the resources and support and community that is governed properly to make that happen. You wouldn't be as likely, at least. And also, it's the proof is in the pudding, but somehow we ignore the pudding constantly. Look at the pudding, people.
Well, and even the niche cherry picking of certain stats. So Hannity keeps going back to, the what he calls like a mass exodus out of California, people leaving California in raw numbers, not per capita, because then it sinks his battleship, right? Raw numbers of people leaving California. Well, California is still by far, and it's not going to change anytime soon, the most populous state in the United States, number one. Number two, why does that statistic matter as much or more as the statistics, the sobering statistic, that California is the 5th biggest economy in the world, and potentially the 4th at the rate it's currently going? You would think, just again looking at it, that that's an infinitely more impressive statistic than whatever negative you think is associated with people choosing to leave California. And listen, like you said, California is far from perfect. No state is perfect, and it is very expensive
because so many people
in
want
large
to live
areas.
there. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, like, that's a perfectly valid reason for people to leave California if they think it's too expensive. Fair enough. You want to criticize it if you think that Newsom's not doing enough to curb that. But the fact of the matter is, okay, well, what else? What are there positive statistics associated with his governorship? Yes, it's about to be the 4th biggest economy in the world. That's insane. That's a ludicrously impressive statistic that I don't think Hannity mentions one time. I don't think Hannity acknowledges it. He literally ignores it, I'm pretty sure, and just goes back to what about migration? What about migration? What about migration to other states? And as Newsom points out, it number one, it's an anomalous statistic, and number two, again, if you adjust for per capita, red states, there are many red states which saw a population exodus, if that's the word that we're going to use, since that's what Hannity uses all the time, that puts Californians to shame. So Newsom, and here's the other thing that's great about Newsom compared to many others. Not only do facts not speak for themselves, and Newsom recognizes the facts don't speak for themselves, so he's going to do it, but he has a quick recall of the facts. This is a man who is incredibly well learned on the relevant statistics, the relevant facts accordingly. And that in and of itself is a talent, Luke. Like, you and I are pretty well studied in this too, and I think we would struggle, let alone Sean Hannity, but if we were put on the spot, like some of this, like it all jumbles together. And
is it 70% or 80%? Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's not just like a recitation of facts. He's able to weave it together in a coherent point in an argument. It's an incredible skill.
In engaging with people in these types of situations, the thing that makes it easy, and you could tell Newsom before the interview kind of, I imagine, refreshed himself on some of these stats, because you know exactly the talking points that are going to pop up every time. And on this whole migration thing, number one, we've seen shifts in population constantly and different trends from red states as well. And it seems to be slowing down. But also, it is true. California, I lived there very briefly, very expensive, as many people know. It makes sense that if a bunch of people move to a place, it gets outrageously expensive. Some people are not going to want to live there anymore. We'll have the ebbs and the flows. But what you want to look at is, what is the state of, still while that's happening, economic growth and all these different indicators within California, businesses being created. He was bringing that up a lot, because there's this idea that all businesses moving out, they're afraid of California. It's not accurate. It's exploding with business. And then there's some high profile examples of, the Tesla headquarters moved or something. So,
and in the case of, I'll point out, in the case of Tesla, because they love to do this, I don't think in that situation in particular, I don't think you can entirely discount, Elon Musk's political agenda playing a role in that decision as well. That's not entirely a fiscal or fiduciary calculus on the part of Elon Musk to move Tesla out of California to Texas.
And the point he made was, it actually makes sense. If you get so humongous that then it would benefit you financially to not have your headquarters there. Still tons of Tesla jobs, but to do certain things like that. Still, clearly California is creating the landscape that is really good for entrepreneurship. My goodness. And that's why so many businesses are getting created, and then moving to other states and bringing money and jobs and all of that to other states. What a gift that California is providing to all these red states that might get companies after they start in California.
That is a great point. That I'll be honest with you, until Newsom said something to that effect, it never crossed my mind to point that out. I mean, it is. You could make the argument that California's vibrant economic landscape empowered and afforded these companies the opportunity to basically be successful in other states as well. They needed California to get their head start, and now that they have it, now they have the full economic liberty to avail themselves of the 49 other states with perhaps a more lenient tax system for them, because obviously most companies don't want to pay taxes. They want to avoid any tax payout they possibly can. So they benefit from the rich, vibrant economic ecosystem that is California. And then once they're able to succeed, they're able to pack it off and go wherever else they want to go. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for watching. For the outro on this video, I want to plug Josiah's channel. Hit them with it, Josiah.
Hey, everybody. I appreciate you watching. You can find me at youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. One word, Pondering Politics. If you like progressive commentary that focuses on coalition building with other elements of the left and calling the Republican Party out for what it's become, I hope you'll view my channel. Give me a like and subscribe and some feedback. Again, youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. Thanks again.